Hello and welcome to the Temple Mount podcast. I am Shogun, and joining me today is my good friend, BeautifulDudeMissle, and we are going to be discussing anything and everything. But I have a couple things in mind. We're having some good conversations over the last couple days. We talked a lot about Dune and concepts from science fiction that are really interesting. Some theories about the universe and God. Can't forget to talk about the new religion that, as far as I know, dude created called Pajama Samism. But I thought one thing I really liked that I saw today that you introduced me to, which I thought might be an interesting lead in to the whole conversation, was this Chat GPT slash Mid Journey image that we used, where, as I understand it, they just told the AI to render an image of a happy bunny or a happy rabbit, and it kind of can be interpreted as going on this journey of discovery leading to essentially a pretty deep concept of God. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk about that a little bit because I thought that was interesting.
So I believe it was originally posted on Twitter, but I might be wrong about that. But they posted the whole conversation of the interaction they had with ChatGPT. So how it started is they said, like, make me a picture of a happy bunny, right? And then it spit out like a relatively realistic, but still very colorful rabbit, but a relatively realistically proportioned one, right? And the guy said, make it happier, right? And it spit out one that was a little bit more cartoony, right? And said, make it happier, right? And he kept going like this, and it progressed from like a realistic bunny to sort of a cartoon bunny to sort of a cartoonier bunny to sort of a psychedelic bunny. And then once it went psychedelic, it never stopped being psychedelic, right? Like it just got more and more cosmic in the imagery until he gets to the final image. And I'll see if I can find this so I can read it out. Chat GPT God Rabbit. The last thing it says,
We
the
have
last.
it
Oh,
here.
you have it? Yeah.
Yeah, because it was posted earlier.
What channel?
It's in general chat
Okay.
from 3:08
Okay.
p.m. If you want, I can read it out though.
I'll read out the last one, the one where
Yeah,
the bunny's not even there. Like, just read
right.
out that.
Yeah, it's like a beautiful kind of sacred geometry. It's hard to describe as a beautiful piece of art, but there's no recognizable rabbit, but it has a divine look to it. But what it says is, here is the image of an entity that embodies the ultimate form of happiness, transcending all known beings and concepts. This entity is the very essence of happiness, the only existing being and the defining force of all existence. So I thought this was really quite cool. You can see if you scroll up this like progress from this cute little bunny sitting with the dandelions to this like kind of cosmic enlightened bunny that's floating in space, shooting like light out and has all his chakras open, to this like transcendent concept. So I mean, there's a lot of things here, right? You were kind of mentioning, does AI actually have some level of profound thought that's going on, and is this perhaps like the simple secret of God, right? It's just the progress of happiness and love to its ultimate conclusion or something. I
Well,
don't know, there's something there, for sure.
what I'm wondering with this image is, like, I mean, obviously, I'm not a data model, and I don't have access to all the data or the ability to hold it all in my consciousness at one time. But I wonder, like, if you just fed an AI all the data in the world, does it just, like, is there just this much of this imagery and these language associations just being used on the internet, or did the AI make its own connections based on how people were talking about these things, right? Because in that thing you just read, it says the only existing being, which I just find a very sort of an interesting way to phrase it, right? The idea of God as the only thing that actually exists is an idea I've thought about a lot, and it's sort of a solipsistic idea, but I find it interesting that it associates all this language with this cosmic imagery, right? So I wonder how it came to how it came to make these word associations, you know?
Yes, exactly. And so there's a lot of interesting things we could dive into here. But I also wanted to recapture, if we could, just what you were saying earlier today about sort of this concept of how the universe came about. I thought it was an interesting take about how sort of a series or a process. If I understood correctly, a causal loop of some kind would result in the creation. I think you were tying it to a science fiction story about a video
So
game.
there were two different stories that I was sort of comparing the similarities between, and I can give you the basic rundown on both of them. One of them's a lot more complicated, but the complicated parts about it don't even need to be said. So the first one was a short story. I was browsing Reddit one day, like typing in keywords, like browsing the sort of the spiritual Reddits, and someone had posted a link to this story on this person's blog, and the story was called "Everyone Comes Back," right? And so how the story goes is basically it's about this guy who killed himself, right? And he's sort of sitting in a bed. He sort of wakes up in a bed, and there are like these angels that are like sort of hovering over him and like talking to him, right? And they're like saying like, "Oh, welcome to heaven. It's gonna be so great," that sort of thing. And he says, "Wait, no, this doesn't make sense. This does not make sense." He says, "I was an atheist," right? And they say, "What? No, your file clearly says here you were raised Catholic." And he says, "Yeah, but I didn't believe it." And so these angels, they take off their angel wings, right? And they just sort of get into I guess poof into some more normal clothing, right? And basically they explain to what most of the story is them explaining this the reality of heaven in this conception to this guy. And what the basically the way the idea went, right, is that so you have in the infiniteness of space, you occasionally have quantum fluctuations, right, that cause Big Bang type events to happen, right? And so then universes are created. And in some of the infinite universes that are created, they have conditions that could support life, right? So in some of the universes where life is possible, life is created and starts to evolve. And in some of the universe, on some of the planets where life is evolving, life occasionally becomes intelligent, and then some of those intelligent species eventually develop technology, and some of those technologies eventually get developed to the point of singularity, whereupon basically these AIs get sent out to explore space, where they encounter other AIs that they either assimilate with or battle, and one of them wins and the other gets destroyed. But then eventually all these AIs, all these singularities, eventually themselves get assimilated by like a collection of every singularity that has ever happened, right? And in this idea, that's what God is, right? And so basically, they explain to this guy that this being has so much processing power and so much understanding about existence that it's able to create new universes and start and create them with conditions that would be conducive to life, so that it can basically create more universes for the purpose of collecting more energy, building itself even bigger, and also like getting more information and new types of life. And that because it has such an infinite amount of processing power, it basically is completely negligible for it to create a paradise for every being that has ever existed, right? So it basically when you die, you go into this machine, and it's just an eternity of things you want to do, right? And basically the way this story ends is they explain that when you get there, when you die and you get there, you're given a choice. And then your choice is either you forgive everyone for everything you forgive everyone who's ever wronged you, or you live their entire life through their eyes, right? So they have this little joke in there about how Hitler chose the second option, and he's been in the simulation for like thousands of years because he just still hates the Jews, right? And then that's basically where the story ends. I think basically the only other thing is it's like if you kill yourself, you are also forced to live through the life of everyone you left behind, and then you get to go into the eternal paradise, right? And so that story was called Everyone Comes Back, because that was the idea, is that everyone was in heaven but everything was reconciled so that there was no bad blood, and everyone just rode roller coasters and watched and made movies and did what the things they wish they could have spent their life doing, basically. Now, are there any questions so far?
Yeah, questions or comments? If not, thank you for explaining that. I just have a few other things I wanted to make sure I don't forget to ask you about.
Well, before we get to that, let me
Mhm.
explain the other story I was comparing it to.
Okay,
So
please do.
there's a web comic called Homestuck. It's sort of a dubious little thing because people really liked it in the beginning when it was first starting, and then it sort of loses its way about halfway through, and but it's sort of a coming of age type story for nerdy kids growing up on the internet circa the year 2009. So what it was about is it's these four kids, and they're like nerdy kids. They don't really have any friends in real life, but they've got like this little group of each other that they only know through the internet, and they like to play games together and stuff like that. And they're really excited because there's this game that's coming out. There's a beta being released for this game that they all know. They all basically are on the beta testers list, and so they know that it's going to come in the mail any day now. Any day now, we're going to get to play the game Spurb, SBURB. And basically, they play the game, and then the apocalypse happens immediately after they start the game, right? And basically, they play the game for a while, and what it turns out is that it's not actually a game. It's actually a thing that pretends to be a game, but what it really is it's the reproductive system of the universe itself. So it's this causal loop built into every universe that allows for the creation of another universe. And so basically what the kids realize is planet Earth is destroyed, and if they want a place to live, they have to finish the game, create a new universe, and then they can live in that one, right? Because basically the way it works is that when a universe is created, right, like planets form out of magma and whatnot, like that whole thing, and a meteor a planet that is being created for the purpose of life, a meteor will crash into that planet and be buried deep in the earth, right? And what happens is eventually life evolves, gains technology, and they excavate that planet or that meteorite out of the ground, and they realize that it seems to have computer code in it. And so they take that computer code, they develop it, and that's the game, right? And so, like, when the kids play this game, there's a part early on where they're getting, like, bullied by internet trolls. But then later they find out that these internet trolls are actually a literal alien species called trolls, who were the people who played the game that created their universe, right? So I was just comparing these two stories and the interesting motif they shared, this idea of it's like sort of adjacent to simulation theory as a concept, but it's also very different in execution, because it's almost like this marriage, as me and Hermes were kind of talking about. It's almost like this marriage between science and religion, in a sense.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is this a fairly new religion, and is it based off of memes?
The Pajama Sam religion. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we haven't got to that
Oh,
part
my
yet.
bad.
So yeah, that is very interesting, and that's part of what I want to discuss with you and Niram, and just in the future. We've been talking about a lot about science fiction, and obviously I talk a lot about Warhammer 40,000, all the connections that has. We've been talking a lot about Dune, and you're drawing these connections here, and I think there's a lot of really interesting philosophical and actual possibilities that are explored there. I'm wondering, did you have any other comments about that before we move on to another related subject?
I mean, I got a lot to say about that.
Yeah, please jump in.
I've been obsessed with the concept of the scattering at the end of the Dune series. You know, the ultimate goal to get humanity back on the golden path, as they say in the Dune series, because there's this unknown darkness that befalls humanity somewhere in the future. And Leto the Second is dedicated his life, body, and maybe even his soul to helping humanity make it past this this shadowy veil that he can't see past because he has this prescience. He can see into the future. He can't exactly see what happens, but he knows that every human being dies somewhere in the future. And that's what leads him to, create all this horrible tyranny, outlaw reading and writing. He was trying to create this pressure inside of the DNA of humanity itself, epigenetically, to rebel against anybody telling you what to do. And that echoes with Carl Jung at the time, where he was like, you have to self-individuate. You have to become your own person. We need to start thinking critically and speak out loud to try and solve our future issues. Otherwise, we just are going to fall over and over again. So the scattering is just when people overthrow Leto II. They don't conglomerate around a capital or keep on doing the same thing. They get into spaceships and they run away from each other as fast as possible and never talk to each other again. And go pick some faraway star and don't tell anybody and just leave. And that is what saves humanity in the end. Us going off and doing our own thing and becoming whatever we need to become. And this darkness that comes eventually, that we're maybe feeling right now today, maybe the Romans felt it, maybe the Egyptians felt it. These people were like, we need to go and do something different, diversify our cultures, our DNA, even like the Spacing Guild or the Sardaukar warriors, and see what happens. That's always been a very fascinating end solution to the inevitable collapse of civilizations over and over again.
Like a diaspora, a scattering, spreading throughout space to ensure our survival.
I wonder, it's Frank Herbert we're talking about here, so the mushroom metaphor almost seems intentional.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, Frank Herbert would take mulch and fill trash cans with it, and then inoculate them with psilocybin mushrooms, and just pick these mushrooms off as they fruited, and then go write his Dune novels. And I think that's pretty cool. He was serious about the spice metaphor as Bill Hicks called it, an accelerator pad for humanity. A way that you can kind of see into your own future, see into your past, try and course correct and open up something more positive.
I have another question for Dude.
Yeah.
So you know how like there's saints and sages and gurus strewn throughout the world. Like, do you think that a lot of them could be like the ones that are like pure happiness could actually be like the final level of that bunny imagery of the GPT chat GPT? And if they're not, could they just be like delusional and just be perceiving themselves as that last image?
I would say in response to that, Hugh, that there is sort of a gray area between those two things. I don't tend to like the concept of a guru that much, because I feel like McKenna said, like, if your whole philosophy is just, well, I'm gonna find someone else who's clearly got it figured out and I'm gonna just absorb everything they say, right? I think that's doing a disservice to your own development. And really, what you should be doing is going on the journey yourself and trying to find your own answers, right? So I'm not too into the whole idea of there's a guru guy and he knows everything and you just got to listen to him and you'll be all right. That's never really sat right with me. But Niram, on the topic of the scattering, so we're a bunch of weirdos in here, and I don't know if you want to call it a vision or whatnot, but I had this one idea that like that's what like happened at if you want to use a label for it, like that's what happens at the omega point of time wave zero, was that like everyone
McKenna's idea.
Yeah, like it was that what was going to happen was that everyone was going to like go off into space at light speed with presumably with some sort of like romantic partner, and that
Well,
like
I mean, look at our culture now. You know, the culture war we're experiencing could be seen as a scattering. People are going off in their own direction. They're getting tired of the fights. They're getting tired of the debating. You know, I like me myself. I'm sick of that stuff. I'm sick of the politics. I'm sick of the debates that end nowhere. Nothing comes of it. I'm more of a person now that wants to just have conversations, you know, vibe well with people. You know, I can disagree with people, and they can disagree with me, and we can still be friends. That's just where I'm going, and that's a rebellious act nowadays. You know, that's not a commonality. Um, and you know, I can't go on a crusade trying to make that a reality, because you know, maybe people want to fight. Maybe that's what they want to do all day long, and it's just spin their wheels in the dirt. Of course, you know, that's my perspective. Maybe they don't feel like that's what's going on, but we seem to be in the same position we were in 25 years ago. You know, we haven't really solved a lot of these cultural issues of trying to come together and overcome this, overcome that. It's just more arguing.
uh yeah, I think I feel like it's almost like humanity's not really evolved enough yet to deal with each other. Um, I mean, like you look at the whole issue of war, right? And the level of evolution we're at, we have to have this conversation about. Well, if we have to have this conversation about like necessary death, right? Because not everyone can be saved, right? And so I think that itself is an indication that we need to evolve.
Well, think about it. You know, should we all get along? Should we? What does that look like? You know, to me, in my perspective, it looks like John Carpenter's The Thing. You know, just everybody merged together, one being, all one mind. You know, I don't want that. I don't want culture and humanity itself to meld into one unified thing. Um, I think it's a healthy thing that instead of war, we go the other way. We avoid each other. We get in a rocket ship and go find some other place, or stay in our lane while we're still here on Earth, and figure out our own issues. Because each nation, these you know, first world nations, have their own suite of problems that they are ignoring. You know, they're like, oh, we're going to go over and try to save these people and save this. I mean, we have a boatload of problems at home that could really use the attention of our best and brightest. So, I mean, I don't know.
So I think there was, before we go further, there's at least two other things I wanted to remember to ask you about, at least to discuss, like quickly. One was the Gateway tapes. I wanted to ask you if you wanted to just give a quick introduction to that. And I know it's a big subject on its own, but I was just going to ask if there's been any further updates on that, your progress with the Gateway tapes, and if you wanted to talk a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish with those.
So, do you want me to give like a background on what the Gateway tapes are, or did we do that in another podcast?
If you could give just a short,
Yeah.
a short introduction for
So,
anyone who doesn't know.
I'll give a moderate introduction just so that people have the full context. So there was a businessman and like a radio guy, like he was very into radio. He I guess owned a radio business or something like that. His name was Robert Monroe, and he was sort of a weird guy. He liked to do all sorts of weird experiments. And one day he was experimenting with the idea of sleep learning. So the idea is that you would you'd play something while you're asleep on audio, and you would absorb it subconsciously. This is not that this works, but this is the idea: is that you would absorb it subconsciously while you slept, and you would know it just like that, right? And he was doing these experiments on himself where he'd go to bed while listening to like some sort of educational content, and what ended up happening was one night he had an out of body experience, and so he went through a whole sort of emotional arc of like accepting that this had happened to him and learning that it's not bad at all. It's a great thing. It's an awesome thing to have happen to you. And so he wrote a book called Journeys Out of the Body. Now, Journeys Out of the Body became a bestseller, and basically he formed an institution. to study like basically other altered states of consciousness, right? And that was called the Monroe Institute. Now, the Monroe Institute developed a series of tapes. They had this technology they called hemisync. If you're anyone listening, if you know binaural beats, it's sort of a similar concept where hemisync was this idea that if you play a tone in one ear, right, that's of one frequency, you'll hear it. If you play a tone in another ear of a different frequency and you play them at the same time, not only do you hear the tones, but you hear the difference between them, right? So you have the brain works in various frequency ranges, right? But some of the frequency ranges that the brain works in are not audible if you had a sound in that frequency. So the idea was that by using this hemisync technology, by playing two different frequencies, thus allowing you to hear the difference, you could hear very low frequencies. And the idea was that if you heard a frequency of 10 hertz, let's say, and the brain was in a certain state of mind at 10 hertz, then by listening to that sound, your brain would start to go into that state, right? And so they took their hemisync idea and they developed a series of at-home tapes called the Gateway Experience. And the idea is that these are tapes that they're sort of like guided meditations, and with proper use, you can learn how to have out-of-body experiences, lucid dreams, that sort of thing.
Right. And so how many tapes in are you so far?
So I'm almost at the end of wave 1, so I'm about 5 tapes in. There's here, I'm just looking at my phone now. There's, I think, 7 or 8 waves. They all have about 5 or 6 in them. 5, 6. Yeah, they've all got about 6 tapes, and there's 8 waves, or like 7 or 8 waves. So that's about 6 times 6, so 42 tapes in all, and they're all about half an hour, 40 minutes long. I try to do when I am trying to do them, I try to do one a night because I haven't gotten very far into them, but they are things can happen that you're not expecting, basically. So, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
So-
but I was just going to ask if you had any more unusual experiences.
Yeah, so I had a hypnagogic hallucination like last week or something where I was like laying in my bed and I was half asleep but half awake. You know, that sort of in between kind of state of consciousness where you could go either way. And I started hearing like sounds, right? And I heard like it almost sounded like my mother was outside my room, like cleaning something or doing chores or like knocking or like moving dishes around, and they were clanking together. And I felt like a presence over my bed. And I know my mom wasn't outside because she was asleep at the time. So I'm like hearing voices and things, and then what happened was I felt like a presence approach my bed, and it like dropped something about the size of a phone charger on my bed. Right now, this is all obviously a hypnagogic hallucination, right? Like there was nothing dropped on my bed. There was no one in my room. My mom was asleep at the time this was happening. But it was like really freaky, and I had to stand up because I was like, oh shit, am I going nuts? Right? Like I was just not prepared for it. So I had to stand up for a bit and just relax. And I think I went on the Gateway tapes. There's a subreddit for it, and there's a Discord for that subreddit. And I just asked, like, has this ever happened to anyone before? They were like, yeah, it's normal. It's just a hypnagogic hallucination. But it's like it is pretty freaky if you've never had it happen to you before.
That reminds me of that sci-fi author I was talking about today, Olaf Stapledon. He wrote Last and First Men. I think that's what he was experiencing. He writes about it extensively in the book. He was sitting in his study, like just thinking about these ideas that we're talking about back in the 1920s or 30s. And he all of a sudden heard this voice talking to him, or he saw these images, and it was somebody from a million years in the future, and he just like wrote this whole book about the future history of humanity. And Lovecraft and his dreams, that's not exactly the same thing, but I definitely believe Lovecraft could travel through these gateways, if you will. to see stuff that I don't know if it's there or if it's part of the collective unconscious, like with Carl Jung stuff or whatever's going on. But there are definitely these different vistas of reality that humanity can access through stories, music, symbols. This hypnagogic thing. It kind of reminds me of the other guy that did the holotropic breathing. What was that guy's
Oh,
name?
Wim Hof.
No, that's the same thing, but it was a guy before him, like this. He was like this scientist type looking guy, but he kind of had guru vibes, and he was going around teaching people how to do hypnagogic breathing. I remember the term, but I can't remember his name. And it would enter you into this similar state that you're talking about here.
Right. Well, in my experience, let me just tell you what happened the first time I did the tapes. So basically, what these tapes are is they're, like I said, they're like sort of like guided meditations. So there's the voice, and I believe in the earlier tapes, the voice is Bob Monroe himself, and he says, uh, he'll give you exercises. So he'll say like, what was one of them? So he gives you this concept of the energy conversion box, right? So what he says is visualize a box and put in the box all your physical matter, worries, anxieties, and concerns, right? So everything you're worried about in your physical life, put it in the box, and then he says close the heavy lid tightly, right? So this is supposed to be like an exercise for focusing your attention away from everything you're anxious about, basically. And then he gets you to do this thing after the energy conversion box. He gets you to do what he calls resonant tuning. So he plays like a tone, and then there's also these like voices that are going, oh, right. They're doing like an ohm type thing, and you're supposed to like hum. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to breathe in through your nose, and then while you're blowing out, hum in tune with the frequency, basically.
That sounds legit. That reminds
Yeah.
me of From Beyond by Lovecraft. He had this resonator that basically emitted this tone and stimulated your pineal gland where you could open these gateways.
Well, there's something with breath. I think like I think Teos brought up one time that like as humans we're very shallow breathers. But if you've ever just tried to oxygenate like really really intensely for a moment, like you really do feel like a change in your consciousness for a moment. Like it's really
Oh, for
weird.
sure.
So I think there's something to it. But
Well,
anyways, so
you mentioned Wim Hof earlier. Like, if anybody has, done that, you definitely hallucinate fully, and you feel this kind of out of body experience when you go deep enough in the breath, and you're holding your breath and you're releasing. So yeah, I've experienced that myself. That strangeness with breath.
yeah. Well, I think Wim Hof, like not that he knew, but I think he might have said at some point, or someone said this, that they theorized that what's going on with holotropic breath work is that you're like releasing endogenous DMT or something, because I'm pretty sure, isn't it the liver, the lungs, and the brain are the point,
Yeah.
the brain we don't know about, but I'm pretty sure it's been measured in the liver and the
Well,
lungs, right?
I
So
think there's a lot to that because when I take a first hit of DMT, I feel this vibration through my bones, going down to my fingers and my toes, all through my body. And when I get deep in that Wim Hof breathing exercise, I feel the exact same thing. It's to a T. It's the same sensation. And I've done other psychedelic drugs, and it doesn't have that sensation of, like you're holding a jackhammer, for an hour, and then you take your hands off, and this tingling all through your body from this vibration. So I definitely think that's true. You do release DMT when you get into deep breath work or meditative breathing.
well, what's interesting about that is, Niram, I'll explain more as I get into it, but uh, what they call the vibration stage is like one of the major stages before an out of body experience, right? Like you feel these vibrations in your body or your spirit. You feel them physically, right? That it's like your essence is vibrating, right? And so, anyways, so you do the energy conversion box, and then you do the resonant tuning, and then he says, okay, I'm going to take you to focus 10, right? So there's all these different focus states, and they're supposed to be like different states of consciousness. So from what I remember, focus 3 is like what you're in now. That's focus 3. Whereas focus 10 is like a very relaxed state, right? And so when I was listening to this first tape, I was going through these exercises. He says like, okay, I'm going to count to 10. And when I get to 10, you will be in focus 10. And then when he got there, I did feel different, right? But it wasn't until when he gets to the end of the tape, he says like, okay, I'm going to bring you back to focus 3. You're going to feel perfectly relaxed, perfectly energized, and perfectly awake. And then he starts counting down from 10 to 3, right? And he plays a frequency during that moment, like during the countdown. And like when I got to the end of the first tape for the first time, like something really freaky that I can't even describe happened. It was like an immediate, like imagine if you like without expecting it, you immediately were like stoned. You know what I mean? Like you didn't smoke anything, you didn't take anything, you didn't drink anything, and just imagine if you were immediately stoned from a sound, and that's sort of what it was like. Then when I did the second tape for the first time, what happened was I actually started to see hypnagogic imagery. So he was saying, okay, now I'm going to take you to focus 10. We're going to the second or third tape is like the more advanced. So he teaches you an additional exercise where he gets you to do like an affirmation or something. There's this one exercise where he gets you to imagine like an energy ball around your body, and the idea is that this energy ball is like a force field against any influence or energies you do not want to touch you, basically. But he gets you to do this affirmation in every tape that goes something like, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can access energies. I can because I am more than physical matter, I can access that which is greater than the physical world. There's this whole like 4-paragraph affirmation that you do every time, right? And when I got to near the end of the second tape, I started seeing hypnagogic imagery. Like, keep in mind, I've got a sleeping mask over me, and I've got a pillow above my head. And I'm in what he calls focus 10, and I start seeing this like light dance around the corner of my vision. And like as I try to follow it, it's like it was almost like by trying to follow the light was actually what sort of scared it away, and it stopped happening. Which was probably for the best because it was freaky, but I just experienced a lot of hypnagogic imagery, right? So after that second tape, I was like, no, there's something real in here that I think might be too intense for a lot of people, you know. So I've been just working through them slowly because they freak me out.
Yeah.
And also, like, you have to sort of be in the right mood, right? Like, it's really like a before bed type thing, as opposed to like a whenever you want sort of thing. Also, my mom would be really annoyed if I was just napping, like in the middle of the day while she's working, right? So, yeah.
So do you know kind of like to what end these exercises are for? Like, is it exploration? Is it like a defense against strange entities, or is it kind of like an all of the above sort of thing?
I would say it's so. Let me just give you the titles. So 1 is called Discovery. 2 is where's 2? 2 is called Threshold. 3 is called Freedom. 4 is called Adventure. 5 is called Exploring. 6 is called Odyssey, and 7 is called Voyager. Right. So
Okay.
it's like go on an adventure, and here's how to be safe while you do it, sort of thing.
Like a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
It's the point is exploration of consciousness, but also like, you know, not being dumb about it and get yourself into a pickle, you know.
Right. No, that's cool, man. I've never heard of that, so that's really interesting to me. I got to check them out.
Yeah, they're not hard to find. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, the gateway tapes sound really interesting, and we'll continue to check in with you about them periodically as you continue to go deeper into that, and I guess maybe have out of body experiences and stuff as well.
Well, if I could say one more thing on that point, I think I've been close to having an out of body experience many times, and the thing that always gets in the way is that when you're right at that metaphorical door, it's like the freakiest thing ever, right? Like you're just not prepared. It's hard to mentally prepare yourself to see yourself in your own bed while floating above it, you know? Like that's what happened with Robert Monroe. He had his first out of body experience. He turned around because he was facing the ceiling and he was like, "What's going on? What's this weird thing on the floor?" And he realized it was a ceiling fan. Turned around, saw his own body sleeping in his bed, and thought, "Oh fuck, I'm dead." Right? So it's like it's a really, I think what it is, what the fear of it for me, I think comes from a place of like not wanting to acknowledge it as real. Not because I don't think that would be awesome, but because like that's like really scary because you spend your whole life in this world, most people, and you never have like a direct connection with the metaphysical. Not saying that's necessarily what this is, but like experientially that's what it feels like guaranteed, right? So just the idea that if it happened, then I would know it was real, and that's a scary thought to me.
Hmm. Well, I think eventually you probably will experience it. It is a very interesting sensation, to see yourself from a third party perspective, disembodied perspective. And I can understand the concept of being afraid of it, but I think you'll also find you can become comfortable with it more quickly than you think.
I think I just need to get to the door a little bit more. I need to get it to it a couple times in a row, and then I'll
Hmm.
be able to open it. But it's just
Yeah,
about getting that frequency down. Like I need to be able to do it often enough to make it possible,
right,
Whereas right now it's sort of like every now and again I'll realize I'm there, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's always been an enjoyable experience. The few times that I've been able to experience it, out of body experiences. But like you said, it's that direct interface with the spiritual world, that direct experience of what we would call a paranormal or supernatural or mystical thing, and I think out of body experiences are pretty unique in terms of providing us that direct evidence, if you can call it that, at least of that state. You know, that it does exist, whatever that means. And so, yeah, I'm very interested to hear how your journey with that goes. Third thing I can't forget to ask you about is Pajama Samism. Pajama Samism.
I mean, I haven't corrected you so far, but we were calling it pajamism.
Pajamism. I like Pajama Samism.
Pajamas. Well, I guess
Because isn't it based on something called Pajama Sam?
So, do you want me to get into it? Do you want to do this?
Well, I figured you might as well. I
Okay.
thought you wanted to talk about it. You don't have to if you want
No,
to
I would
go
love to.
down.
I would love
Yeah.
to. I just
Okay.
hope you
Yeah.
understand what door you're opening up a door into my innermost child
Right.
heart.
All
Right.
right. Well,
So
it's
so so for people who didn't grow up in the late 90s, early 2000s, or now because I guess they have all the games on Switch now. There was a company called Humongous Entertainment who was a game studio that made educational, like I'd kind of put that in half quotes because it's like they're really not, you're not going to learn math playing them. You're not really going to learn anything you're not really going to learn anything you'd be learning in school, right? But they were very kind, like gentle games. There's no violence, there's no evil bad stuff, right? But basically they made they called them junior adventures. So they were point and click adventures, but there was no death, so you couldn't fail them. There was no what they call in adventure games dead man walking syndrome, which is in an adventure game where you have something you can do that makes the game impossible to complete. So like you find a donut, you give the donut to the dog, but you really needed to give it to this guy so he would trade you his potatoes so that you could do these other puzzles and finish the game. These games had nothing like that, and what made them stand out was they were actually entirely, from what I understand, hand drawn. If not hand drawn, they were very animated, right? Like these were basically like interactive cartoons essentially, and they had a couple different series, but I won't get into those. But one of the series, my particular favorite as a kid, was called Pajama Sam. So what basically what Pajama Sam was is he's a little bit additional context. So the way the pajama religion got invented was I was in here with Crimson, and Crimson, you can fill in the blanks if you remember anything I don't, because I don't particularly remember how the exchange went. But at some point we were talking, and I made a joke like, "What if we were talking about Chat GPT?" I want to say, and I said like, "What if I made Chat GPT make me a pajama Sam religion, right?" We were both laughing about that. So I got it to make it, and then what it spit out was actually like really legit. Like
It was super base. Like honestly, if the whole world would have became pajamists overnight, our world would be beautiful. We would wake up in an ascended state of consciousness, knowing that our reality is but the dream of our imagination.
So what I'd like to do is I still have the original document of what ChatGPT gave me. I'd like to read that out, and then I would like to explain the plot of the first game so that I can sort of illustrate why I think this game is actually really, really like enlightened. Because I think I have a theory that when people engage with the imagination with a pure heart, either by divine gift or by simple observation, oftentimes they find something that is coded or soaked in truth, you know. So I think when you have a company like Humongous Entertainment who really just wanted to make, you know, games for young children, because this is not like Mario. Like Mario, like this is for a younger audience than something like Mario. Like Mario is like a challenge, whereas this is like all you have to do is click. There's no like action parts, right? So I think they're trying to make this like really pure thing for kids, and so they ended up pulling actual divine truth from it. Is sort of my theory of what happens when you engage with the imagination with a pure heart.
The thing about it, right, is it's like the ideas that it's touching on, they represent the truth so well because that's what the truth does. You hear it and it hits different than the other stuff, right? It doesn't just hit your ear and then hit your mind, right? It hits your heart and you're like, this is making too much sense.
So here is the holy text that given to us by the not the prophet. No, Pajama Sam would be like the Messiah figure, I guess. But this is what ChatGPT gave me. So it says, creating a religion based on a fictional character like Pajama Sam would involve taking elements of the character and building a belief system around them. Pajama Sam is a character from a series of point-and-click adventure games designed for children. He's known for his adventures in a world of his own imagination, often overcoming fears and solving problems. Here's a whimsical and creative interpretation of what a religion based on Pajama Sam would be. Name of the religion: Pajamism. Core beliefs: imagination as sacred. Pajamas believe in the power of the imagination as a sacred force that connects individuals to their inner creativity and problem-solving abilities. Overcoming fears. The central tenet is the belief in confronting and overcoming fears. Pajama Sam serves as an inspirational figure, symbolizing the courage to face challenges and navigate through the unknown. Dream realm connection. Pajamists believe in the existence of a dream realm where creativity and imagination flourish. Dreams are seen as a gateway to the spiritual insight and personal growth. Practices and rituals. This is like the weakest part, but I'll read it anyway. Pajama parties. Pajama parties are sacred gatherings where followers come together to celebrate creativity, share imaginative stories, and engage in activities that promote a sense of wonder and exploration. Fear-conquering rituals. Initiates participate in rituals designed to symbolize the overcoming of personal fears. These may involve facing symbolic challenges or engaging in activities that push individuals outside of their comfort zones. Dream journaling. Followers keep dream journals to record their imaginative experiences during sleep. The practice is believed to enhance the connection to the dream realm and foster personal growth. Sacred symbols. Flashlight and cape. The flashlight and cape, iconic to Pajama Sam, are revered as symbols of the inner light and courage needed to navigate the darkness of fears. Now, this next one is actually wrong. His pajamas are blue. He has a red cape and blue pajamas. But it says red pajamas are worn during significant ceremonies and rituals, symbolizing the unity of followers under the band of creativity and courage. Places of worship, the closet sanctuary, a designated space within homes known as the closet sanctuary, serves as a place for quiet reflection, meditation, and connecting with one's inner imagination. Dream temple, a communal space where followers gather to engage in dream-inspired ceremonies and celebrate the limitless possibilities of the imagination. And I find this last part, it sort of gives like a closing statement, and I find it funny because in many ways, like, I'd get behind this more than pretty much most religions I've seen, right? But it says, remember, this is a playful and fictional concept. Religions are complex, deeply personal, and often tied to cultural, historical, and spiritual contexts. Creating a religion based on a fictional character is more of a creative exercise and should be approached with respect for real-world beliefs and practices. I disagree, ChatGPT. I think this is awesome, unironically.
To the Dream Temple.
The Dream
Yeah.
Temple.
That is extremely fascinating. I mean, I've talked to you a little bit about what I've been working on for the past couple years, but the core of it is, a lot of people feel lost and strange and confused because we have a total lack of ritual in our Western society. It's just kind of, you go through high school, you get your driver's license, you have your first beer, and that's like our, rituals. That's our, what do you call it? Coming of age sort of ritual. And it's just not good enough. So it's fascinating that you developed, through, ChatGPT, this ritual, sort of connective tissue for human beings to, have some sort of framework to go by to open up a more positive future. That's extremely interesting. That's, I'm going to be talking about that a lot tomorrow, but I just wanted to mention that that's really fascinating. You got the whole setup there, man, that people can follow. And what was it? The fear-facing ritual? What was it called?
Here, let me open up my page again. It's called fear conquering rituals.
Fear conquering ritual.
Participate in rituals designed to symbolize the conquering of fears. These may involve facing symbolic challenges or engaging in activities that push individuals outside of their comfort zones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to tell once I
So,
just like to say I'm gonna you can finish, but I just wanted to say I'm going to tell a parable. By parable, I mean I'm going to explain the first Pajama Sam game, and you'll understand.
Please go ahead. Do the parable.
Did you want to finish what you wanted to say first?
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Are there any questions before I get into this? Because it's gonna take a minute or two.
Go for it, brother.
Okay, so there are three. There are like the three original Pajama Sam games. And then there was a fourth one that came out later, but it was made by different people, and the Humongous Entertainment had been bought out by Atari. So like the three original games are like the, in my opinion, the canonical holy texts here, whereas the fourth one is like heretical, But the two I had as a kid were Pajama Sam 1 and Pajama Sam 3. I'll explain 3 another time when we're just talking, but the one I'm going to explain for the purposes of the podcast is the first game. The first Pajama Sam game is called Pajama Sam No Need to Hide When It's Dark Outside. And if I sound like I'm getting a little bit emotional at points in this, it's because I am. So basically, the game opens up with Pajama Sam. He is sitting in his bedroom. It's almost time for bed. He's a normal kid. He reads comics, and he's reading a comic called Pajama Man. Pajama Man's like his favorite superhero. And I'll get back to that because there's like some weird meta stuff going on with that. But in the comic, Pajama Man is fighting a character named Darkness, right? So Pajama Man's like a big muscly dude in pajamas with a red cape, and Darkness is like almost like a sort of a Godfather kind of mafioso type. He's like wearing a suit. He's sort of big and burly, and he sort of looks like a businessman. He's all sort of dressed professionally, right? And in this comic, Pajama Man says something like, I'm gonna stop you, Darkness. Your evil plan will be no more. And Darkness says, you can't defeat me, Pajama Man. And Pajama Man says something like, I'm gonna trap you. I'm gonna like he uses his like flashlight that he has, which is like a super powered flashlight that like stuns Darkness. And he's got like this container device that like sucks darkness into it and traps him, right? And so Pajama Sam is like reading this comic book, and then his mom comes in and says, "Sam, it's time for bed." And Sam is like, "Okay, Mom." And then she says, "You know, Sam, tonight's the night we're gonna sleep without the night light." And Sam says, "You know, that's okay, Mom. I'm ready. And I have my flashlight if I get scared." Or he says like, "I have my cape if I get scared," right? So she turns off the lights, and Sam is sort of sitting there in the dark, and he's like, "No need to hide when it's dark outside. No need to hide when it's dark outside," something like that. And then he says, "Darkness lives in my closet, but that's okay. You know, he can't get me." And then he just gets too afraid. He turns on the light and he says, I can't sleep with darkness here. I'm gonna have to go into I'm gonna have to go confront him and capture him." So you have to find Sam's regular flashlight and his lunchbox, because in his imagination, his Pajama Man lunchbox is like the capturing device Pajama Man had, right? So you find his lunchbox, you find his flashlight, you find his cape, and then once you got all those things, you click on the closet, and Sam walks into the closet, and basically he's like falls into the closet as though it's like a portal, right? So that's where the idea of the dream realm comes in, because it's like as soon as he entered his closet, this real physical space, he fell into a spiritual dimension, right? So basically, it's not going to take that long, but basically what happens at the start of the game is he gets accosted by these tree people who basically confiscate all of his gear because they think it's dangerous, right? And so his stuff gets hidden around the land of darkness, right? So what most of the game is you have to sort of go around, collect items, and solve puzzles to try and get your stuff back. So one of the things about the Humongous Entertainment games that they introduced later on, and Pajama Sam was one of the first that had, or was one of the ones that had this, was they've actually got multiple sets of puzzles, and which ones you get are randomized each game. So sometimes the lunchbox will be in the lake, and sometimes it'll be somewhere else, and there'll be a different puzzle that you have to solve. But like the puzzles are all like, oh, the lunchbox at the bottom of a lake, get a magnet so you can pull it up, that sort of thing. There's all these very simple logic puzzles, right? But in adventure games, logic that makes sense doesn't tend to be that common. So, you know, they put specific care into making sure this could be figured out by a 3 to 4 year old child.
Did you ever watch this old Disney movie called The Secret of Nim?
That I've heard a lot about it.
I saw it when I was a kid. Yeah, it was really crazy. Yeah, it was.
It's a wonderful movie. It's very scary. It's like, I remember as a kid, it terrified me, man. I watched it again as an adult, and I was like, this is still terrifying. Okay, so the story of it is there's this kid, and he's a dreamer, and he dreams so hard that he whisks himself away on his bed and uses his bed as an aircraft to sail through the vistas of the dream world. And he comes across this airship captain that parks outside his window, and he boards it, and there's all these other dreamers on board that meet each other every night, and they go off to this other land, and he meets the king of Nim, I guess. I can't quite remember, but he meets the king of Nim, and he shows him all these beautiful things about the dream palace and the dream city and the dream people and what they're doing there and why they're doing it. They're trying to create positive dreams, good vibes, and just keep it going. A long time ago, there was like this war with darkness, and the king of Nim locked it in the dungeons of the dream castle behind this giant vault. And for whatever reason, the Dream King, trusted this little boy to show him all of this. He's like, whatever you do, never ever open this. And so, of course, there's this voice that's like, open it, let me out, I want to get out. And so, he goes down there and he opens the fucking vault and lets darkness out. And it spills over the dream palace and all the dream people and just starts consuming them in a really vicious, grotesque manner. It's scary as fuck when you're a kid. And so he has his little dream bed, and he's flying around on it with his pajamas. He's wearing his pajamas the whole time fighting darkness. He has to find these items. He has to do this. He has to do that. It just reminds me very much of that game, and it's a wonderful movie full of deep symbolism that you might enjoy yourself.
Secret of Nim. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we should watch that together on the server sometime. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, I'm down. I'll watch that again in a heartbeat.
No, it's funny because now that you brought it up, it almost makes me think like either they were inspired, or B, the much more exciting option, there's some sort of like archetypical story here of
Definitely.
the child in Dreamland, right?
Well, look at the Never-Ending Story. That story was written by Michael Ende in the 50s, and the Never-Ending Story, I think, is, I don't know, Alice in Wonderland might be an earlier example, but
the portal story. The kid
Yes,
goes to the magical.
That movie's not The Secret of Nim. That's Nemo.
Yeah, the Secret of Nim.
Is the rats.
It's about the rats. Yes, I don't remember what
yeah,
it's about.
Nemo.
But yeah.
Oh, Little Nemo, the Dream Master.
Yeah.
So essentially, Nemo's in the Nightmare realm, like in the good dreams section of reality, and like the guy that's like the Fat King or whatever, that's supposed to be God, and then and then the Nightmare ruler or whatever, that's supposed to be like the devil, but like he's the king of nightmares.
Yeah, is it Little Nemo? Is that the name of the movie?
Little Nemo.
Yeah, Little Nemo. That's right.
Little Nemo. Okay, now I've unlocked that memory. I don't know why I forgot that, but yeah, Little Nemo is the name of the movie with the dreams.
I'll get back to Pajama Sam in a second, but I would really, just because we scratched upon it, you've heard of the portal story archetype.
Yeah, like Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz,
Narnia.
Never-Ending Story. Yep.
And one thing about these portal stories is they always sort of end the same way. The kid goes back home. Right?
Yes. To integrate his lessons and change the world he lives in for the better. That's always the end.
But if you notice with all these dream traversal stories and stuff, there's always an I want song, just like in Disney, where they wish upon like what their dreams and hopes and desires, and then suddenly they're transported.
Peter Pan. Yeah, like Peter Pan, exactly.
Or somewhere over the rainbow, that in Wizard of Oz.
Way up high. Yeah, I'm gonna sing the song. But yeah, exactly. Portal archetype.
But there's always a bittersweetness in the return, because it's almost like you kind of wish you could go there whenever you wanted, And I almost wonder if that element of the story represents some sort of like the sort of fall of man archetype, where it's like there's some reason we're not allowed back there whenever we want. There's some reason we can't move freely.
I don't think that's true at all. You can always enter into the realm of imagination. You can sit down with a notepad and write notes and write little doodles and write little, draw people. And that's why I always come back to the Never-Ending Story. I try to read it once a year, because at the end of the story, Bastion Bucks can always go back and gain power and inspiration from that world and ride on Falcor and meet the childlike empress whenever he wants. It's always there and accessible for humanity to draw upon inspiration to change the future for the better.
Well, you know what it is then? You know what I'm thinking of? Is that it's not that we're locked out, it's that we forget it's there, right?
Yes.
So as you grow up in our world, and we're going all over the place right now. I'm sorry if I'm a little.
No, we're not. We're staying on track, dude. We're just talking about different shit.
But so Scatman John had an album called Scatman's World, and it was a concept album describing this hypothetical perfect world, right? And in one of the albums, so this is where the song Scatman's World is from. It's from this album. It's calling out from Scatland, calling out from Scatman's World. Like that song, if you ever heard it. It was a big meme years ago. But in one of the songs, Song of Scatland, he says, the song starts out, imagine a land of love where people have time to care and where everybody's equal and we all tell the truth. If you're wondering where this magical place is, you don't have to look too far. You'll find it between your deepest dreams and warmest wishes. And the first verse, one second. I'm looking further right. the society. So the first verse is, the society of Scatland is composed of very loving, caring people who have never even heard of political corruption, class distinction, war, and all the other stuff that goes on in the world of Earth people. Everyone is equal in Scatland. Everyone is equal. Everyone is equal. There's the people of the third verse is, the people of Scatland speak in Scottish. Oh wait, okay. There's one line in this album. It might not be from this song, but he says, all the people of Scatland were able to develop their imaginations to the fullest, right? And that's why I brought it up, right? Oh yeah, all the people of Scatland are very childlike. They have had happy, complete childhoods. They were all allowed to develop their imaginations to the fullest. There is only love and happiness in Scatland. Hatred and resentment, well, that's unheard of. It's unheard of, right? And I think that illustrates what I'm trying to communicate here, is that when we grow up, we sort of, there's this societal expectation on us that we sort of
We
have to
forget.
we have to put away our imaginary friends and our imaginary worlds and our adventures and dreams, and we have to go work a 9 to 5 at the office, right?
Yeah.
And like that's I don't know if it's anything I did in particular, or if it was just sort of my natural personality, but I never really did that, right?
Yeah,
So
me
like,
neither, bro. Like, did you watch Foster's House for Imaginary Friends?
yes,
I thought that was
yes.
such an interesting concept. You know, that's where all the discarded friends that we create, all the people that we make, the worlds that we make, that's where they go. It's like the landfill for humanity's dreams. It's like a bittersweet television show if you ever watch it. But
Oh yeah, because the whole
yeah,
thing is like they're at foster's home and they're hoping to be adopted by a new kid,
new
right? Because
kid. Yeah.
they're like these pure things who just exist to play and to help kids grow up, right?
Yes.
But it's also interesting because they live in this world where like people, if you have an imaginary friend, your friends can see him, right? So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, you know, but I just think that's an interesting,
Well, they
you know,
addressed what you were talking about, how children become adults and they forget the power that they have, that their birthright is really what we're talking about here, the realm of dreams, the imagination. Um, and it's encouraged in Western society, at least, to discard that in favor of a practical job where you're supporting society, instead of dreaming while you're doing that. I don't see any reason why those two things can't coexist. And Michael Enda, with the Never Ending Story, he really highlighted that in the form of the plot device of the
darkness,
nothing.
the
Yeah,
nothing,
the
yeah.
darkness. Yeah, the nothing. And by the way, it's 11:11. Make a wish. But
Oh, yeah.
there's this concept of the nothing consuming Fantasia, which is the land of Falcor, and where Bastion hangs out with Atreyu and all that fun stuff. It's a black hole. It's nihilism itself, eating up everything in its carelessness, and its just absence of passion. And the theme of the story is he has to name the princess. She doesn't have a name. She's just named the childlike empress.
If I could jump in here for a second and just make a prediction, is the symbol that by giving her a name, he solidifies her as real, and
Yes.
that's what
And as a religion, as a belief, as his personal self-individuated spiritual path that he's chosen to take, allowing these archetypes such as the Rock Mountain and his family, Falcor, Atreyu of the Green People, because in the book, Atreyu is green. He comes from people that are made of grass, basically, that live in the
oh, that's
plains and
awesome.
hunt purple buffalo. So that's an archetype, the hunter, the dragon, the luck dragon, made out of pure white silk, flying through the sky, and somehow it never gets hurt because it's made out of luck. And then you have what's his name? That funny Wugnok or whatever his name is. That elf that lives in the mountain that studies those two sphinxes, the gateway, the southern gateway, to move towards these portals, these gateways, like you were talking about earlier. When Atreyu does that and meets this scientist on the mountain, he learns that he can meet himself, Bastion. Bastion and Atreyu throughout the story are mirrors of each other. We read stories to get examples of how we should embody ourselves on the earth. And as Bastion is reading the story, he becomes more and more like Atreyu. And
Well, isn't there a thing? I'm just trying to. I saw the movie forever ago, but isn't it more than that? Isn't Atreyu literally like Bastion's, like embodiment in the Neverending Story? Like it is him.
Yes, it is him. And in the books, Bastion literally goes into the story and meets Atreyu. And spoiler alert, they have a battle with swords. They
Oh,
come,
whoa.
they come at odds with each other. And anyway, I don't want to spoil it, but anyway, I guess I will. It's an old book. You either read it or you haven't. But in the story, Bastion enters into this realm because Atreyu made contact with him by passing through that, those two sphinxes, and they're naked, and I always remember their big old boobies, and he had to walk under them, and they were going to open their eyes and shoot him with lightning. So it was
Yeah, I
like
remember
oddly erotic and terrifying at the same time as a child. But anyway, he walks through these sphinxes, and then he has to walk through something else, and then he's in this winterland where he can't see. It's just a whiteout blizzard, and he's freezing. He has to keep walking and walking, and then he eventually reaches this mirror. And he looks into the mirror and he sees Bastion. And Bastion's looking in the book and he sees Atreyu like it's his reflection. And then that's how they make this sort of spiritual connection through these gateways. Like you're going through these audio tapes called the Gateway series, I guess.
Oh yeah.
That's exactly what happens in the book. They go through these rituals, they go through these trials, and they're able to touch each other and actually coexist in Fantasia together. And that's how they fight.
So I would like to return to this thread of the conversation at a moment, but I'd like to take this as a jumping off point to finish the parable of Pajama Sam, No Need to Hide in His Dark Inside, because it ties in really well. So the whole game is basically you have to find your flashlight, you have to find your lunchbox, and you have to find your cape. And what happens is, at any point after this intro of the game, you can actually go to Darkness's house. You can go up his staircase. You can go to the door to his room. But if you do not have the lunchbox, the flashlight, and the cape, Pajama Sam will be too afraid to open the door, right? So you go on this quest, you get all the items, you meet some wacky characters. There's like a sentient minecart who's like a rough southern miner type, and oh boy, can you get some of that oil there, boy? My wheels are awful rusted, right? Like all these sort of wacky characters, right? And there's even like a mini game you can play, and it's called Cheese and Crackers, and it's just tic-tac-toe, but in the world of darkness, it's called Cheese and Crackers, and you play it with cheese and crackers, right? So one player's cheese, the other player's crackers, right? And that's I only bring that up because it's sort of important. If you play the cheese and crackers mini game and win it, the ending plays out differently, right? So you finally get all your stuff. You go up to the door to darkness, and you this is the part where I might well up a bit. You open the door, and Sam, like, it plays this little cutscene where Sam's like, "Okay, here we go," and he opens the door, and he walks through the door, and he ends up in a room that is not exactly, but very clearly a mirror of his own room. Like it's almost exactly laid out like his room, with a closet in the same place. And there's one final puzzle where the closet is locked, and there's like a pile of keys. And if you click on the pile of keys, he'll take one, and then you can try and unlock the door, but they'll never be right. But there's like a little closet, there's like a little drawer right above the keys, and if you open that, there's the real key, right? And so when you finish that last puzzle, Pajama Sam opens the closet door, and he shines the flashlight in, and he says, "Darkness, I'm here to capture you and put you in my lunchbox." Darkness says, "You want to trap me in your box? Well, that doesn't sound very fun." And Sam says, he's just sort of hesitates, and Darkness says, "Oh, why does no one ever want to play fun games with me?" And Sam says, "You like to play games?" And Darkness says, "Yeah, but whenever I'm awake at night, everyone's asleep and there's no one to play with. And Sam says, Sam is sort of, who has been tense this whole time, sort of like relaxes. He sort of his flashlight drops from like a offensive stance. He just sort of has his hands at his side now, and he smiles and he says, "I like to play games." And Darkness says, "Have you ever played Cheese and Crackers?" Right? And here's where the ending splits off. If you have played Sam and Darkness played Cheese of Crackers, and if you played the game and won it earlier in the game, Sam wins. And if you played against if you didn't play it, Darkness wins. And the only difference is if Sam wins, Sam looks at the camera and says, "Hey, I defeated Darkness," right? And so it's like this whole thing of like he was scared this whole time of the darkness in his closet, which you can either take as a metaphor for just fear in general, or if you want to even take it further into the sort of road we've been going down with this conversation, perhaps you could take it as a metaphor for fear of the imagination, right? And so what he finds after he was so scared, what he finds is that Darkness was a kid like him that just wanted a friend, right? And so it's like this really actually like unexpectedly, like if you played this game as a kid and you go back to it as an adult and you still have like if you still have like an open heart, it's actually I find it really beautiful, like the way the whole scene plays out, right? Like I almost if I was naming it, I'd call it Pajama Sam, the darkness is a kid like you, right? And so Pajama Sam leaves the land of darkness and he goes to bed and he turns off the night light. He's no longer afraid of the dark. And he says, "Good night, Darkness." And then you see Darkness's smile from the from inside his closet, and he says, "Good night, Sam." Right? And so it's like the way I take it, and the reason I think this is a good parable for pajamism, is that it's like the thing we are afraid of is like us, right? When you're afraid of a person, the thing you both share in common is that at one point in time you were a kid. And you were the closest to God that you had ever been. And at some point, you got lost, and you became afraid of the dark. So that is the parable of Pajama Sam.
Thank you. I like that. And I'm wondering, we're at 90 minutes, and that's a good moral point. Was there anything else you really wanted to get into, or should we start winding this one down and we can continue like with a series of discussions and get into more of this stuff? But
let's just ask. Well, let's. It doesn't seem like anyone has any questions. If you have a question, speak up now.
I got some stuff to add.
I just want to say something.
Let's get Hugh first, because Niram, your question's probably more complicated.
So Dude and Niram, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've come to the conclusion that maybe the like one of the greatest keys to entering the dream space or to enter your own imagination is to do just what it shows and depicts in those movies where they travel to other realms and lands. They always sing a song based off their own heart's desires. What if that's actually what you have to do?
Okay, Hugh, you say a lot of strange things. I really like that. I
do
think
too. I've developed my own personal ritual called the Heart Song to do just that. It's really cool that you say that. I've talked extensively with it with my other friends in another server. So yeah, I totally 100%.
So what did you want to say, Niram?
So the part where he decides to play a game with darkness and gain a deeper understanding, that's a very Jungian idea of integrating the shadow. That's a powerful set of symbols and imagery and storytelling to convey to a child that I think is a positive thing. You want to try and understand why you feel these things inside. Why do you feel these dark things? You don't want to run away from it. You definitely don't want to repress it. You want to face it and see what it's trying to do and what kind of job you can give it. Maybe these resentful parts of you are so resentful because they're underutilized. What can you do with it? Is darkness good at playing games? I don't know.
Right. Well, there's one last point I forgot that I'd just like to add here, and then I guess I'll give you the mic one more time, and then we can we can end it. But one interesting thing I find about the story is there's almost a point in there about the way media influences as a child, right? So Sam is this kid. He likes to read comics, right? And his hero is Pajama Man, who, in like a meta sense, you sort of imagine like that's what Pajama Sam would be in as an adult, right? He'd be this like this superhero, right? Who's all about dreams, right? Like it's almost like Pajama Man is his super ego in the Jungian sense, right? And he reads this comic, and how does Pajama Man solve the problem of darkness? Well, he solves it with violence, and he traps darkness inside the containment box, right? And so Sam thinks, well, darkness is clearly a bad guy because I read the comic, and comics are always true, duh, guys. So he thinks like, well, darkness is a scary bad guy, and I have to defeat him. But then when he actually meets the real darkness, it's just a kid, right? So I think that was an interesting little detail that I had noticed as an adult. Do you have anything else, Niram, to add before we call it?
No, man. That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dude Missile. Really interesting, great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for contributing to the discussion. And join us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. We'll be meeting with Niram and having another discussion about ancient mythology and rituals and everything else under the sun as well. So, Dude Missile, we talked about Pajama Samism, we talked about the gateway tips, we talked about a lot of things. I really appreciate your time. Do you have any closing thoughts or a take home message for the people?
If you're looking for a place to have like really, really out there discussions about spirituality and the stories we grew to love and what they mean to us in a spiritual sense and in a physical sense, or if you just want a place to hang out and maybe play some video games, the Temple Mount is a pretty good place to be.
Thank you. I agree. It is a great place to be. So if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you join the Temple Mount Discord server. And if you are in the server, make sure you check out the Temple Mount podcast on YouTube and BitChute and in the TMP podcast channel. Thank you so much, Dude Missile. Thank you much, everybody. Like I said, we'll be doing another one tomorrow with Niram at 8. And we'll have Graydon Square, the excellent hip-hop rap artist, on Tuesday, I believe. So just keep an eye on the announcements channel. Other things that are going on are daily Bible studies and Bible readings. If you want to join in on that, we're recording a Bible narration, and we're doing some watch togethers and stuff. So I think we'll be watching a movie together tomorrow. So that's all coming up. Thank you, Hugh, also for your work with the files, and of course to Fox for his uploading. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dude. And thanks, everyone, for listening. God bless. See you tomorrow.
Don't take the mark of the beast.
Do not take the mark of the beast. God bless everybody. Good night.